So the world, wondered what was going to happen. Well, 50 plus years passed, and Bible scholars were looking at especially chapter 38, and they said 50 years from 1948 passed, and Iran was America's ally, and the Shah of Iran and the whole thing till 1979. And then it got a little dicey over there, but they never began to be talking about destroying Israel until about the last 5 or 6 years. And now, if you do Google news searches, you can't find a week going by where Iran doesn't say something about annihilate, exterminate, or whatever Israel. And that's exactly what the Bible says. The God who watches over his word was waiting and directing the rulers of the world to do his bidding. That's why 1948 came. And now there's hardly any day that doesn't have some new item about Israel's annihilation. And other nations now, Syria has started to say it too. And Hezbollah, and the Muslim Brotherhood that is fighting right now in Egypt. And all of them say either they're going to do it with their missiles and their drones or whatever, or they're just going to do it with their armies. But why is everybody so against Israel? There have been more resolutions in the United Nations against them than any other nation on earth by 100-fold. Why does everybody hate Israel? Well, God has already described in detail what will happen in the future. And every time what God has declared will happen always happens. And by the way, every time prophecy is fulfilled in the Bible, as in when Daniel was calculating, as when Jeremiah was calculating, as when each of the Old Testament prophets were calculating anything about prophecy, all of them happened literally. Even down to Christ's birth. They didn't know what that meant. But when it happened, it was literally what it said would happen. And so God has a track record of literal fulfillment. And so when we examine closely those involved and see what the people of this world are saying, it's going to be fascinating to look at what the Lord has planned. Well, basically, the lesson tonight is we need to trust the God who wrote down and you can read these words, we'll look at them tonight. Trust the God who told us in his word and promised Israel would return. Now, Jesus told us, but he told that 600 years after God had said it. God the Father had said it through his Spirit in the Old Testament. God the Son said it when he taught on earth. They were saying the same thing, that there's a future for Israel. So basically, what is that future? Well, in Ezekiel 36 and 37, you can get down to verse 10. I'm going to read it in just a minute. The God who rules the universe tells us that Israel will one day be reborn as a modern country. The Jews will pour back into the Holy Land after centuries of exile. The Jews will rebuild ancient ruins. I want you to think about that. If you go to Israel, they're naming all the places the same thing that they are in the Bible. Isn't that interesting that God said that all the ancient cities of the Bible would be rebuilt? And they're very excited about it and doing it all the time. They would make the desert bloom like God promised. Israel would develop a vast and powerful military. It actually says that in the Bible, that Israel would develop a powerful military. By the way, who was Albert Einstein? A Jew, yeah. How about all the other atomic scientists that worked alongside of him? Who developed some of the most powerful weapons in the world? The Jewish Nobel Prize winners. They have a higher percentage of Nobel Prize winners per capita over all nations on earth. The Israelis do. God just, even in their unbelief, has remarkably blessed them. And finally, Ezekiel 38 tells us that Israel will become remarkably wealthy. If you've been listening to the news, isn't it fascinating that within the coastal waters that belongs, according to the whole world, to the nation of Israel, in the Mediterranean, just so far in the last 2 years, they've found 1.7 billion barrels of oil just off the coast of Israel, nicely placed. It would be nice if it was placed right off the coast of Egypt. They're starving down there. It'd be nice if it was placed right off the coast of Turkey because they're buying their stuff from everybody else. It would be nice, it would help Italy if they had it right there because they're always in debt. You know what I mean? But isn't it interesting that in the whole basin of the Mediterranean, the first place they found unbelievably huge resources of petroleum products is right there. And it says that in the Bible, that Israel, Ezekiel 38:12 and 13, would be vastly wealthy. And a lot of people attribute it to banking, but it's not.